discussion. They're the event sponsors for this entire event, so the reason that you guys are here and are able to eat is because NetApp graciously sponsored this event, so give them your full and undivided attention. Thank you. And they're going to do something a little different. They're going to do a panel discussion, so I'm just going to pass it off to Claude and let him just describe what's going on.
Thank you. I want to thank you guys for having us here, and again for having NetApp be the preferred storage partner for Citrix. We are pleased to be part of your sales kickoff this year. What we're going to do is working with some of your SCs in the field. We've had some success in some areas. We haven't even engaged yet. So what I want to do is some of the feedback we've gotten from some of the SC managers, from folks on our side is let's cover some of the questions and myths that you guys are seeing around kind of storage when it comes to desktop virtualization, and how NetApp can solve a lot of those for your customers, whether it's in a private cloud example for ShareFile or a desktop transformation with Zen Desktop or Zen App. We're going to do a panel. On the panel, I'll let the folks introduce themselves in a second. The other thing that we have is we have 3 folks online that are going to be answering the online questions that anybody might ask in the chat room. So Rachel Zhu, Cedric Corte, and Abhinav Joshi, who is our product manager on the Citrix product line at NetApp, are online to answer any questions. So feel free to ping them for the folks that are online. Additionally, guys, we are launching a beta version of www.citrixnetapp.com. Been working with Tarkin and some of his folks to get that up. But basically, this is going to be a site that's open to both field teams to go in and engage with each other, ask questions, engage with the product management folks, the technical marketing folks, and help facilitate some of the questions you guys have on deals or provide sales tools or technical documentation that might be needed. With that, I'd like to pass it off to the panel and introduce the folks. We have Vaughn Stewart. And Vaughn, please give a little bit of introduction about yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us out. It's our privilege to be here. My name is Vaughn Stewart. I'm a director in our solutions integration group. I focus on cloud computing. I'm also a virtualization evangelist for NetApp. So again, thanks for having us out.
Hi, everyone. My name is Neil Glick. There's my awful picture there. I'm a virtualization architect at NetApp. Thank you very much for having us, and hopefully we can answer all your questions.
And Nick Rintallen, you just heard from me in the 11 o'clock session, but yes, I'm from Citrix with the red dots, as you can see there. Yeah, and a lovely picture as well. I was actually at our Santiago office, Citrix office down there.
It's better than mine.
They're like, Nick, back up, and you're like, what's that? Is that a lens?
So yeah, I'm here to just assist with the panel, and there's a few myths I think that need to be busted. And I'll share field experience from when we've been working with NetApp in the field, doing Zen Desktop deployments and whatnot.
And the last person I'd like to introduce, standing off to the side over here, is Kevin Whirl. Kevin is part of our BDM team that runs Americas. He's been engaging with your DMs across the Americas and setting up linkages with our teams to do account mapping and engagement, as well as kind of building up pipeline and lead gen. So if you guys during the break want to reach out to Kevin, feel free to. So myth number 1, RAID 0 is faster, more efficient, and more reliable than NetApp RAID DP, aka RAID 6. I'm going to pass this off to Vaughn to start off.
Sure, great. So someone having a discussion around RAID levels is usually someone who probably has a long history of deploying systems, looking for high availability, high performance. You probably got bit somewhere along the lines by choosing some other form of RAID. This is a question that we haven't necessarily on the NetApp side fielded a lot of late, but it's kind of resurged with server virtualization and whatnot. Long story short, in being a storage vendor, we could have created any type of RAID technology that we wanted. What we looked for is high availability and highly reliable, but also one that was very cost effective. So we've published all of our benchmarks that are available, whether it's TPC spec numbers, whether it's spec SFS numbers. All of our benchmarks include RAID DP. That is the format that RAID has. It's a dual parity RAID data protection system that is using parity bits, not mirroring like in a RAID 10 algorithm. Parity bits provide the data protection. All of our benchmarks show that we achieve high performance and some record-setting benchmark results leveraging RAID DP. And most of our submissions, or all of our submissions are RAID DP. Most of the other submissions that are in these TPC and spec SFS sessions are built on RAID 10. So from a performance standpoint, I think we've got enough public information that shows there is not a performance issue with RAID DP. In terms of a data protection issue, mathematically speaking, and I discussed this actually in my upcoming book called Virtualization Changes Everything, RAID DP provides greater data protection than RAID 10. We often consider losing data to be based on a disk drive failure, and that's actually not how disk drives tend to fail in the majority of environments. You tend to have issues like data loss or bit errors or data cell corruption, depending on the type of media that you have. And that tends to be the course of losing data. In a mirrored construct, if you actually lost a drive and you had a bit error, which they're going to exist on every drive, on the mirror of that drive, you lose that data. In a RAID DP scenario, because we don't have a mirroring construct, we have a parity construct, we can actually lose a drive and hit another media area or hit two media areas and always be able to reconstruct that data from parity. So it's more available than RAID 10. So to summarize, if my performance is equal to or greater than RAID 10, if my data protection is greater than, or if you want to argue about it, I'll go down to equal, but my cost for the RAID protection is not mirroring or 100% overhead, it's a parity overhead, so it's about 12.5% overhead for the data protection. Why would I look at RAID 10?
So Neil, from your experience working with the Citrix folks and Zen Desktop and customers, can you share how this compares to other storage solutions and where the value is in a Zen Desktop deployment?
Sure. So I think a lot of the misconception comes from more traditional storage or vendors where they allow you to do different kinds of RAID. You can set it up as RAID 5, RAID 10, just striping if you want. And they have that flexibility. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's actually quite nice. The way NetApp does it is different. So if you just look at it and say, well, NetApp does RAID 4 or RAID 6 or RAID DP, a lot of times folks say RAID DP, it's RAID 6. But the way that we do it isn't necessarily the way the textbook says. So if you just took a JBOD and mirrored it RAID 5 or RAID 6 or RAID 4, it's not really comparing apples to apples the way NetApp does it. We've got a lot of logic built into the box, and a lot of mathematical computations go on behind the back end. A lot of smarter people than me have actually done this and have set it up so that it's not only you get the benefit of performance as well as the capabilities of the box, but the way we write the data allows for the speed, but you also get the cost savings with the disks.
And I think a real easy way, and I thought you were going to go there for a moment, you started to discuss that outside of NetApp, the norm for a storage platform is to have multiple RAID types, multiple RAID options. And you can summarize the reasons for multiple RAID options is there's a different cost attributed to the overhead for the data protection. There's also different performance characteristics of RAID. We believe we are in a very unique position with RAID DP in terms of providing low overhead, high performance, and high resiliency. And that's why, on our box, it's only RAID DP. It is literally a set it and forget it mindset where the difference of that really comes to bear when you look into a production environment and you say, I carved up some array and I've got RAID stripes that are based on physical boundaries. And if I run into a performance problem, I now have to migrate data.
Right.
We don't have that on NetApp. It's RAID DP or it's just not NetApp.
Yeah. It's kind of like the oven, where it turns the chicken. Yeah, you turn it on and then you just forget about the chicken. Once you set the RAID, you really just want to forget about it. You don't want to have to worry. Is my performance going down? Am I losing performance because of that? Like I said, much smarter people than me have spent a lot of time creating this algorithm and how it actually works. When we write data to the disks, we don't just write it as the data comes in. We actually coalesce the data and write it in big chunks so that we don't keep spinning up media every time that we write to disk.
So Nick, I know as we were kind of building out these myths, this is one of the ones that you had kind of top of mind, and we've also heard from Tarkin and his team that there are some folks that have misperceived views of how RAID DP is versus RAID 0, RAID 1. Can you share your perspective from Citrix point of view?
Yeah, and one of the reasons is because when there's NetApp's not in there in these customers, we will recommend RAID 10, right? And why do we recommend RAID 1 plus 0, 0 plus 1, or 10? It's because of the low write penalty and because of the type of IOPS that we're generating, right? In a PBS-based Zen desktop deployment, that's like 95% writes in a steady state, small random write IOPS, the most difficult IOPS to deal with. That's why we've recommended RAID 10, because the write penalty associated with RAID 5 or 6 is like worst case scenario. It's 5 or 6. So RAID DP, the write penalty is not RAID 6. It's not 6, the write penalty. It's more in line with like 2, like RAID 10, but it gives us better data protection. So I look at it as like a hybrid between that kind of RAID 10 and a RAID 5 or 6, right? You get the best of both worlds. more on how they do that, NetApp, it's, as long as they use the ONTAP software and then the waffle, the file system, to aggregate the writes that are coming in. So as soon as a write comes in, they don't just write it like a traditional array. They aggregate, coalesce, and then they write full stripes. So I mean, that's the secret sauce behind taking the write penalty from 6 down to 2. So I think, yeah, this is a myth that definitely needed to be busted, because a lot of times we're recommending RAID 10. We're the ones out there. But when NetApp's in there, we should be recommending RAID DP because it has that low write penalty, and we can use it not only for the write cache drives, these little secondary write cache drives, right, that might have all write IOPS, but also for the infrastructure clusters or resource pools, right? So typically what we do in an EMC or whatever, HP, is we'll have RAID 10 for the ones that host the write cache drives, and then RAID 5 or 6, right, for all the other stuff. We can just use RAID DP for everything, keep it simple. Done.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience on this topic before we move on?
Just think of the chicken.
What's the name of that rotisserie?